And Jenna, I think Amy mentioned if you can just help monitor that, that would be great.
She's on it.
Sweet. Okay. Awesome. We have so many people on here. Yay. So hi, everyone who is joining us from various parts of Colorado. We're so honored and excited to have you here tonight for our Just Recovery Roundtable. My name is Julia Williams. I am the Communications and Development Director for 350 Colorado. And I'm joined here by an amazing panel of guests who you will shortly hear meet. I just wanted to go over a couple of things for the logistics for this call and the agenda. So everybody can chat in the chat if you want to. We are muting everyone else, so you won't be able to take yourself on and off mute. We have a pretty packed agenda to hear from all of the people that are on this call with us. And so please don't take yourself on mute. Please don't share your screen. Obviously, we're going to be monitoring the chat the whole time. If anybody is posting anything offensive, you will be removed from the call. But I trust that everyone here is not going to do that and going to be amazing. So I want to just go over the agenda really quickly. We'll have a quick grounding moment from Amy, and then we'll just do a quick introduction of the speakers and kind of why we're here today and the concept for this call. And then the predominant amount of the call will be this roundtable sort of question and answer format with our awesome panelists. And then if we have time, we might take a few questions from the chat, but we might not have time, and then we'll close with a prayer. So this Just Recovery Roundtable is to launch our Fundraise Up for Our Future fundraising campaign that 350 Colorado launched today to fund our work to engage folks in the process of motivating a just recovery in Colorado and to run those campaigns. So we'll be dropping that link. We're hoping to raise $3,000 through this call today. That's our goal. So if anyone can contribute even $5, definitely appreciate it. I know times are tough for everyone right now, but we hope that you will make an investment in this work. So Amy, you want to go ahead and lead us?
Yes. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Before we get started on our Just Recovery panel, I just wanted to ground us for a few minutes and give a moment for us all to reflect and to take a deep breath from everything that's been going on in the last week, and just to bring us here and let everyone know that 350 Colorado stands with the Black Lives Matter movement, and we're committed to working with Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities from across Colorado to hold our leaders accountable to the injustices forced on communities of color. And we pledge to work to dismantle the systems of oppression that not only make communities of color targets for violence, but also targets of toxic pollution. And we know that we don't live single issue lives and that this is not a single issue moment. Ecological degradation, systemic racism, economic inequality, social inequity, all of these issues are deeply intertwined and intersectional and connected by the same root causes of exploitation, colonialism, extractivism, and an economy built on capitalism and for-profit and corporations at the expense of Black lives, brown lives, and the expense of our health, safety, and democracy. So we're gonna take just a minute to take a deep breath, to close our eyes, and to give a moment of silence for Black and brown lives across the country this week. And send energy and good healing vibes to all of our frontline warriors and everyone on the front lines this week standing up to oppression. Thank you, everybody. Black Lives Matter.
Thank you so much, Amy, for grounding us in that moment. I know if anybody is having the year of 2020, it's been a tough year, I think, for everyone. There's a lot of ups and downs, and it's an especially intense emotional moment right now. And so we wanted to have this discussion around where do we go from here, because it is in these uncertain times that we realize the fragility of the interwoven systems that we all depend on to survive. And it is the chaos of this moment that confirms what we've known about climate disruption and its power to devastate along lines of existing inequality is no accident. Research shows right now that Colorado is widely off track to meet its emission reduction goals, and we don't have a lot of time to solve the climate crisis. And I know that that's weighing on a lot of people, but we can build a better future, and we must build a better future. And this concept of a just transition and a just recovery has really come out in the last year, and especially the just recovery out of the COVID-19 crisis in the last couple of months. And this was something that 350 Colorado has signed on. 350.org has some just recovery principles that I'm going to be sharing with you today. But we hear these words and they kind of become buzzwords. We don't ever really know, what exactly does this mean? Where do we go in Colorado to get to a just recovery? What are the priorities for our communities? And so the format for this call today was really to bring about experts and leaders in the climate movement from various different sectors to have an organic discussion and ask some questions about what is a just recovery. Because for me, I feel like one of the key things that is at the core of a just recovery is community discussion, community engagement, people first, grassroots, and that is what our movement is all about. And so if we're going to have any hope of motivating a just recovery, it has to start with these type of conversations. And so we hope tonight will kind of be this initial conversation about creating a shared vision for what this means. And we want to hear from all of you. I know a lot of you who registered on Zoom already put in some great thoughts. On the donation link, there's actually a place for you to put in your vision for a just recovery as well. And we'd love to see you sharing it in the chat and social media throughout the course of this call. And afterwards, after we create this shared vision together, we'll be organizing over the next couple of months to make those goals a reality. And so that's the format for tonight. I don't have any fancy slides. It's really going to be a discussion with the people who are leading this movement. We may or may not take some questions at the end, but feel free if you have questions or comments to be typing them in the chat. We'll do our best to respond. But I'm just going to go ahead and dive in with first introducing the 5 principles of a just recovery. So number 1 is that we put people's health first, no exceptions. Number 2 is that we provide economic relief directly to the people. Number 3 is that we help workers and communities, not corporate executives. Number 4 is create resilience for future crises. And number 5 is build solidarity and community across borders, and that we don't empower authoritarians. And so some of these questions are going to be around, how do we get there? What does this mean to you? And how do we incorporate these principles into our organizing in the climate movement and other social justice movements? So I am going to ask Amy or someone to drop the link for the Just Recovery principles in the chat so that you can learn more about it. But I am going to just go ahead and hop into introducing our speakers. So speakers, after I say your little bio, if you can just pop on and wave and say hello, and then I'll go to the next person. So Hunter, I'll introduce you first. Hi, there you go. Hunter Levins is the president of Natural Capitalism Solutions. NCS helps companies, communities, and countries implement more regenerative practices profitably. A professor of sustainable business management at Bard MBA, she coaches social enterprises around the world. She is a chief impact officer at Change Finance and a consultant to industries and governments worldwide. Thank you so much for being here, Hunter.
It is my honor to be here.
Wonderful. Micah Parkin, you want to say hi?
Hello, everybody. Thanks so much for joining. So great to see all your faces.
Micah is the founder and executive director of 350 Colorado. She has 25 years of experience as a climate and clean energy advocate, community leader, organizer, and nonprofit director. Micah also serves on this board, the City of Boulder's Clean Energy Technical Team, and on the board of 350 Colorado Action. Thank you, Micah. Lili, are you here?
Hello, thank you for having me.
Hi, Lili. Lili Flanigan is a graduate of the International Baccalaureate Program at Palisade High School as of how many weeks ago?
I believe my graduation date was May 18th, so 33 weeks.
Yay, congratulations. She served as one of 3 co-leads for the 2020 Earth Day Live programming in Colorado and is the lead organizer for Grand Valley Earth Week Coalition. She's the chair of the Education Committee for Grand Valley Students United and the chair of West Slope Youth Vote Program. Thank you, Lili.
Thank you.
Maria, do you want to pop on and say hi?
Hi, everyone.
Hi. Okay, Dr. Maria Michael is a world-renowned and respected medical intuitive, channel, empath, healer, psychic, and teacher for over 40 years. She's been awarded 5 advanced degrees, including a PhD in counseling psychology. She is a Lakota Diné traditional elder and has participated and led traditional Native ceremonies and doctored alongside the Lakota medicine people. Thank you so much for being here, Maria.
Thank you. Thank you.
Emmett, you want to pop on and say hi?
Hello, everybody.
Hi. Hi, Emmett. Thank you. Emmett Hobley is the president and founder of the Montbello Neighborhood Improvement Association. His focus is on community stabilization, general well-being, and increasing the affordable housing stock. He is committed to keeping all communities safe and inhabitable and is passionate about the community and how the oil industry and gentrification affect our communities. Thank you, Emmett. Hi. Is Bill on here yet? Okay.
No.
I don't think so. I've been talking with his coordinator, and she's concerned he may be having some technical issues. So hopefully he will be on as soon as he can get it sorted out. Sorry.
No worries. He has my phone number just in case he needs it. I'm going to go ahead and read Bill's bio now, just so that we all know who he is when he hops on. So Bill McKibben is an author, environmentalist, and activist. In 1988, he wrote The End of Nature, the first book for a common audience about global warming. He is a co-founder and senior advisor at 350.org, an international climate campaign that works in 188 countries around the world, including Colorado.
Bill is just joining us now.
Great. Make him a co-host so he can unmute himself. Amy?
Yes, I will.
Bill, we just introduced you, so as soon as Amy makes
I can't do it. You have to do it because you're the host.
No worries. I got it. All right. Bill, if you want to hop on really quickly and just say hi, we're just doing introductions.
Hello, hello. I'm so grateful to be with you all. I'm sorry to be a minute late tuning in. It's the usual technical difficulties with living in rural America. The internet is less than perfect here, but there you go. And what a pleasure to get to join with everybody. This is the end of a long, terrible, difficult week in a pretty horrible year. And all the better to get to see people who are hard at work doing the work that we desperately need to do. So I'm very glad to be with y'all.
Awesome.
Oh,
Thanks so much, Bill.
Great. So let's go ahead and dive into the juicy stuff. So like I said earlier, I have questions that I've prepared for each of you, and we'll have a couple of minutes to respond, and then we'll see if other people want to tag in off of that. So Hunter, my first question is actually for you. So you've been helping to convene the Emergent Series and now the Colorado Regenerative Recovery Coalition to provide guidance to the governor's office on what a just recovery from COVID-19 and the climate crisis could look like. How do the 5 principles of a just recovery play into your strategic thinking, and what kind of big picture policy change are you all proposing in Colorado on climate?
The 5 principles are excellent, and as the person who's going to write the final report, I'm going to embed them at the top of it. we're looking at how do we meet Colorado's needs for energy, for food and water, for infrastructure. How do we save Colorado's democracy? How do we ensure a regenerative economy? So we're looking at a whole series of these sorts of issues. To me, the key to a just recovery, to a just transition, is ownership, is the ability of each one of us to have a say in the systems that determine our lives. There was an interesting exchange yesterday on Fortune magazine, where Fortune actually wrote a pretty nice statement honoring Black Lives Matter. And one person wrote back and said that rather than using the quote that they did, they should have used a quote from Ayn Rand, that capitalism is the only system in history where wealth is not acquired by looting, but by production, not by force, but by trade. The only system that stood for man's right to his own mind, his work, to his life, to his happiness, to himself. What? This country, and indeed most Western nations' economies, were built on the backs of indigenous people, of Africans who were kidnapped, looted from their homes, dragged halfway around the world, forced to work without pay, and then enter into a system, the Jim Crow system, that was designed to crush them, to crush their spirits. We owe them. We owe them ownership. We owe them a say in the system. It has to change. And justice, a just transition, has to be the foundation of all of the work that we're doing, or we're not going to achieve any of the goals that we have. The COVID crisis is a little crisis compared to the climate crisis, compared to the crisis of inequality. And they are all wrapped together. We now know that investing in renewable energy gives 10 times the number of jobs of investing in any fossil industry. Renewables are now cheaper everywhere in the world than fossil. The International Monetary Fund just reckoned that 2020 is going to be the year of peak fossil. It's going to be declining after this. Our job is to make that so, but to do so in a way that gives ownership, that gives local community control to all people. To me, a just transition is one in which we all thrive. And the good news is it's starting to happen. Just before coming on this call, I got the news that Germany has just announced the greenest recovery plan yet. I've been working with the Club of Rome in Europe, helping to organize 260 activist groups calling for the European Green Deal, and it looks like the European Union is going to adhere to this in their recovery. So our job here in Colorado with the Alliance Center, with 350.org Colorado, is to make sure this happens here. And I'll tell you right now, I'll pledge $100 to 350.org Colorado.
Thank you, Hunter. I guess just a quick follow-up is there any specifics in terms of the kind of things that you guys are recommending that would do these things, put the power in communities? Do you guys have any specific policy recommendations that you're working on?
Oh gosh, there are so far, and we've only done 2 of these sessions out of 6. We have hundreds of specific policy recommendations, everything from ensuring that agriculture in Colorado shifts, which it already is doing, away from industrial agriculture to regenerative agriculture. We know that regenerative grazing, regenerative crop production sequesters carbon. In some of the experiments, up to 15 tons per acre per year. If we did 1 ton per acre per year on all the world's grasslands, over 30 years, we would get back to 280 parts per million concentration of CO2. So we know how to roll climate change backward at a profit. Now is the time to demonstrate that we can do it. And we know that this is, again, the more profitable. So it's starting to happen.
Awesome.
What can each of us do? buy our food from regenerative ranchers, farmers here in Colorado, support local renewable energy. I literally, just before I came here, was installing new Simplify batteries to back up my solar system on the ranch. So when the power goes down, I have power. And what I did was replace the 15-year-old lead acid batteries that had been there before. We have the technologies. We know what to do. Let's do it.
Thank you, Hunter. Awesome. So kind of going off of that, I guess my next question is probably for you, Bill. In one of your recent newsletters, you pointed out that even locking down most of the planet due to COVID-19 didn't cut emissions as much as we might have thought, suggesting that a great percentage of the trouble is hardwired into our systems and not solely a function of our habits and choices. How do we break out of these systems dependent on fossil fuels, and what are the key policy solutions that states like Colorado should be implementing to rapidly reduce emissions?
Well, excellent questions. Let me back up a minute and let's just talk a little more generally right now. Let's just, for the moment, take cognizance of where we are this week. I mean, you know, everybody on this call has spent huge part of their lives, you know, at some level or another working to save the world. One of the things that's inherent in that is the belief that the world is worth saving. But we got to make that so. You know, if the only reason we're saving the planet is just so people can go on living in the kind of pain and sadness that people are living in, that we see displayed every single day, if we can't do something about some of those systems, that sort of systematic oppression of other human beings here and around the world, you know, I mean, a crappy country that runs on solar power isn't a huge bargain, you know. So I just think I think it's really good right now that people are rightly focused on the most immediate questions. And I'm happy to, you know, this is good to be, it's really good to have a break from writing and protesting and things for an hour and to talk about the you know, the long future. But let's bear in mind how useful and good it's been to watch big parts of the climate movement understand that that this needs to take second place right now to what's going on. And what that means, though, is that, you know, Hunter's absolutely right. We have the chance to rebuild our society now. We wouldn't have wished this pandemic on anything and anybody. There's no silver linings to a pandemic, you know, too much trauma and misery. But if we're going to go through this kind of stuff, we might as well learn some lessons. And as I say, as you said in your very good question, Julia, one of the most interesting questions is, why didn't it do more to reduce emissions than it did? I mean, we've changed daily life of people on this planet on a scale that nobody could have imagined 6 months ago. No, the most radical environmentalist couldn't have come up with this scenario where you would, I mean, literally don't know anyone who's been on an airplane for months, you know, where everybody just stopped working and stayed home, you know. And that taught us some very useful things, including the fact that we can do an awful lot of our things without getting in the car and commuting every day, which is a very good thing to know as a society. But it also only dropped emissions 10 or 15%. So you're right, a good deal of that, you know, a good deal of what we are going to have to deal with is in the guts of our systems. You know, we basically have to rip out all that coal and oil and gas and stick in a lot of insulation and sun and wind, you know? And so, I mean, the last time we were in this much economic trouble was the Great Depression. And what did we do? We had a New Deal to put lots of people to work. That's why we did it. if you look around the world right now for what task there is large enough to use all the hands that are now available, there's no other task except this one of rapid transformation of energy systems. And it's work that's noble and important and will pay for itself over time. And that we need to do in place. No one's going to put their house on a boat and send it to China to get it retrofitted, you know. It's work that we have to do all over the planet, which is good because the whole planet is hurting. So I think that the key thing, though, is to try and make that recovery as we make it serve not only the ends of an ecological necessity, but also the end of what now is so clearly social necessity. If we can't do it in a way, I mean, yes, I'd rather have, you know, I suppose, giant corporations running solar panels rather than oil fields. But really, I don't want either one. What we want is a world where we build power community by community. And the good news about that is the sun and the wind are everywhere. They're not like coal and oil and gas, which are in a few concentrated places in the world, usually to the sadness of the places that happen to sit on top of them, where people get to breathe, you know, fracking fumes. So I've rattled on, but that's to me that's what a just recovery looks like. And the only thing I've got to say is there's no getting around the physical requirement that we do it with some speed too. So there you are.
Yeah, thank you so much, Bill. And that kind of brings me into my next question. Number 2 principle of the just recovery is provide economic relief directly to the people. And Maria, this question is for you because Indigenous communities across the nation have been hit by COVID-19 amongst other disasters, with the Navajo Nation surpassing cities like New York to have the highest per capita rates of COVID-19. We've committed to do our share to help by donating 25% of what we raise during our mid-year fundraiser to impacted Indigenous communities. Can you talk more about the pressing needs for this community that we can support and why providing economic relief directly to the people and building power within these communities is essential to a just recovery?
So I want to say Wopalatanka, thank you to Hunter and thank you to Bill very much for what you said. It really touched us in the heart. And Bill, you have a big hello from Tom Goldtooth from Indigenous Environmental Network. He said to say hi to you and that we should talk later, but they're so intertwined. You know, what's happening on the reservation, we were late getting on because we are trying to intercept a truck that's going to Tuber City that has PPE. And there is no PPE on the Diné reservation for the doctors and the nurses and the frontline workers or EMS or police. We've been sounding the call since the beginning of May when the spirits asked us to start this. And we've been a one-person operation with our Sundance relatives on the ground, doing boots on the ground, much like Standing Rock. Because like Bill said and Hunter said, sometimes the governments aren't always your allies. And so boots on the ground is the way it's been working. And we've gotten 8,000 surgical masks that are non-reusable. We've gotten 800 masks that have been hand sewn and sent out. We've gotten face shields that are being made by Texas University. We have someone in Los Alamos who's trying to figure out how to get us PPE. But the sad part of all this is that before the pandemic hit, there was still 30% of the Diné and Hopi reservations that had no electricity and no water. So how could they wash their hands to stay safe from this pandemic? There are people on another 30% of the population of the 27,000 square miles of the Diné and Hopi reservations that have uranium polluted water because the US government and EPA still has not cleaned it up from the 1950s. And so when they run out of bottled water, they start drinking the polluted water. And now many of the children, if you use the Geiger counter on their bodies, are irradiated. I mean, the horrors are unspeakable of the conditions that they have to live in. and that they live in, and that they get up every day and try again. And that's the fortitude. That's the recovery. We have to go into these communities and all these reservations and all the places where there's poverty, with all the Black and brown people, and even places like Appalachia, where there's not even the basic necessities. We are so privileged. We get to go to a water tap and open up and there's water. You know, even on the reservation, there's no way to communicate. People are being sent home with COVID to their homes, but there's no way to mark their homes to say that they have it. So someone goes to make a delivery because people are trying to make food deliveries. We just sent out sanitizers from the Sewa International Hindu Organization. We've been reaching out to all kinds of people. We just had a KGNU interview with Maeve Conran, trying to get the word out. There's so much need. It's hard to figure out what need is the first need. Do we help the frontline workers? Or is what's important that people don't have water to drink and they don't have water to wash hands? Well, if they can't do that, how are we ever going to stop the pandemic? All the hospitals are full, all the ICUs are full. There's so much need, but the joy of this, and Bill, I want to talk to what you were saying. If we just build a solar economy, a solar world, but there's not that just equality across. The one thing that this has been incredible for us to watch is the miracle of the human spirit, and people just willingly jumping in and being willing to say, I don't know you, but after I talk to you, what can I do to help? What can we do as a company? We're still trying to we talked to the Colorado Distilleries Organization. They weren't able to help us with sanitizer. They just hooked us up with the National Distillery Organization to see if they can get us vats of sanitizer so that people can clean their hands and stay safe. It's like my brother saying, I'm doing things online and I'm standing with the gloves, and even though I didn't touch anybody, and even though I just speaking to people through cars, I have to throw them away, and every time I throw one away, I know that there may not be any more coming back. We don't have enough to throw things away. If we had sanitizer, we could clean them, but we don't. So we have to keep throwing them away. So there's this kind of mentality and this paradigm of power and greed that doesn't allow people to use ability or knowledge that used to be used when we all lived closer to the land. It's not just the indigenous, we all lived closer to the land. We were all at one time living in connection to the land. We all respected the earth. We all gained its bounty of food and water and shelter. We all knew how to make judgments about seasons and times of years. That knowledge is still there for many, but for many it's been lost because of technology. And technology can help, but how do we marry the two in this recovery? How do we marry, for example, the VA doctor who called us and said early in the week, we need to let this information out, but we can't let it out now because we'll lose our job, because everything in the VA is wonderful. However, there are people who are getting reinfected after having COVID the first time, even after they show antibodies, even as they test negative. So we have to get a handle on getting information to the right people and the right researchers, that people can get reinfected just because they go out grocery shopping. The immunity is not lasting. So how do we help everybody? Because the people on the reservation, they're sitting in a land that has very little resources and very little ability to even take care of themselves on a daily basis, let alone in a pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been part of the GoFundMe that we've been doing. And if anyone is curious about that, you can reach out to us personally at Dr. Michael at drmariamichael.com, on our website, www.drmariamichael.com. We are trying to change this world, just like everyone else who's on here. This is really critical, because if we don't start saving each other and we don't start living as one family of not just humankind, of all living beings, that means the Standstill Nation, it means the Stone Nation, it means the winged ones, it means the creepy crawlers, it means the ones that swim in the water, it means the four-leggeds, it means all of us coming together And if we can't create that level of respect and that level of value for life, that's what this is about. That's what this pandemic is teaching each of us. We chose to be here at this time of the pandemic. We chose to incarnate. So what is our job? How are we to serve at the highest level so that we can change this paradigm from power and greed to one of peace and prayer and love?
Thank you, Maria. Thank you so much. Yeah, I've been contemplating this question today on World Environment Day, which is today, just about the environment that I want to be in. And it's not just the environment as our earth and the physical place that we are, it's the systems, it's the relationships, it's everything else that we build. And we have to build a future that we want to be in. And so my next question is for Emmett. Principle number 4 of a just recovery is to help workers and communities, so similar to what we've been talking about, and not corporate executives. As a previous worker in the oil and gas industry and an organizer in a frontline community in Colorado, what does a just recovery mean to you, and how could it benefit your community?
Hi, everybody. A just recovery in our community means that stop the exploitation of the oil and gas industry. Stop the exploitation of the economy and the political system. We want it's just economy looks to me as going in and changing the complete system, the educational system. We live in a 2-tier system where children are getting taught proportionately. We're seeing a lot of dropouts. We're seeing a lot of inequity in the system, and I think that at this time we need to take that opportunity and address the educational system and make it fair and inclusive for everyone. Historically, capitalism has been a system that has been born on the back of slavery. And this went all the way back even before this country was ever built. And if we continue to participate in this evil system, we can't expect anything better. So I advocate that we go in and we completely tear this system down, and whatever we come up with may not look like capitalism at all, because we need to make sure that education is inclusive, the economy works for everybody. We're going to lose over 40 million jobs, or 40% of the population is going to lose their jobs. So we need to be looking at re-education, retraining. We need to get away from oil and gas and fossil fuels and retrain all those people in the green economy. And we need to make sure that everyone in this economy can have a livable wage. You cannot have a system without a livable wage. You can't have no longer depend or thrive off the backs of poor people. We want to educate everyone and lift everyone up together. Politically, we have to go in and we have to just tear the whole system down, because like I said, a dynasty, when you have a dynasty, nothing's going to change. It's all built built for just one group of people. So we need to come in and tear down the political system. We need to end the gerrymandering. We need tenure politicians, and we need to make it so that everybody's included. Everybody has the type of education that will teach them about land trust, personal trust, investment accounts, things that would elevate this our communities, make them more viable and resilient in the future. That's basically all I have.
That was great. Thank you. And I love some of those concrete things that you were saying, and this concept of everyone too. It's not just the Front Range, it's not just the Western Slope, it's everyone, it's the entire country, it's the entire nation that we need to rebuild and take down and make real systemic change. And so I guess that brings me to you, Lili. You are an organizer from Grand Junction, which is a more rural and conservative part of the state. And I am curious to know what you think the climate movement needs to do in terms of engaging rural communities on the Western Slope in a just recovery, and especially young people like yourself. How can we build a movement that goes across borders, goes across the continental divide, where we can build power and unity behind these things, even though we may live differently and have different views? And yeah.
Absolutely. I think it's really important for people to recognize, especially if you are deciding to be an organizer, try to create change over a big area, because not only is there diversity in so many ways, but diversity in viewpoints. And so I think, one, it's important to recognize that a lot of people here, I mean, if you've ever been through the Western Slope, you've seen the signs that are by the interstate, and you've seen, you know, all of the things that love to remind you that this is a very, very conservative area. And while there is a small progressive population, it is harder and harder every day to try and sort of get through to those who maybe don't necessarily agree or want to agree. And so specific to the Western Slope, I think having an understanding of the opposition that's facing you is very, very important. And I know this, I mean, considering I've just graduated from high school and I was kind of taking inventory of the things I was thankful for the other day. And one of them is the fact that I grew up in somewhere that the majority of people's beliefs politically and just normally are very opposite to mine. And so I am, you know, able to work with them and understand them a little bit better. And I think that hopefully that'll allow me to make change in the future. And so I think that's something that everyone can strive to understand. And here there's this very weird sort of dichotomy. Our economy is based on, one, the oil and gas industry, and the other side is outdoor recreation, both of which are affected by climate change in different ways. And I think the outdoor recreation industry clearly is quite a bit more progressive. And part of the reason that is because they may work in the oil and gas industry, or their parents may work in the oil and gas industry. And so we've gotten pushback, one, because really most, if not all of the climate change organizers have been relatively young, either college or high school students. So we've gotten pushback because of that, pushback because of blatant denial of the issue at hand, and then because of economic dependency on industries like the oil and gas industry. And so I think that it's very important for the climate movement to recognize that when you're working in a rural area, and I would, in comparison to Denver, I would consider Grand Junction rural, I think that the focus has to be on transitioning, because as much as I and everyone else that I work with would love to just say, okay, we're done with oil and gas, it is just not feasible, as much as it is horrific for the environment, for our health. And so to eventually, we're playing the long game here in rural areas is how I like to look at it. And so we feel pretty strongly that having a transitional focus is really the most important thing, especially those of whom who are working on a statewide level. You know, considering that the same change you maybe would be able to make in Boulder of shutting down an oil rig, it would be much more difficult here. And so I think speaking to people differently, with an understanding that they probably are not as focused on clean air as they are on economic growth, as frustrating as it is. And then people here, at least in Grand Junction, and I can use COVID as an example, people are sheltered in the sense that the reason that focus is not on recovery is because we haven't really been hit hard. We have pretty decent air quality in comparison to a lot of other places. Even light pollution, it's easy to get away. So, you know, we have it pretty good here. And with COVID, we really have had a very minimal amount of cases. And I personally do credit that to the fact that we don't really have international visitors coming through here all the time. If we did, that would be beyond me. But I think that it's difficult to convince people of the need for recovery when they can't visualize or sort of see this tangible thing that needs to be fixed. Because we have been rooted and grounded in the oil and gas industry for so long. And so in terms of youth engagement, I think through the West Slope Youth Vote program, we sort of use that as a pilot for peer-to-peer engagement. We've moved it across many issue areas, including climate change. And so I think also lifting up voices of young people is really, really important when you're trying to engage youth, especially in a rural area, because there will always be some young high schooler or college student in whatever rural area, no matter how small, who believes in change. And so lifting up their voice and supporting them is so incredibly important. And when we talk about intersectionality, I think a lot of people, I think it's one of the most important things to consider in any sort of aspect of the climate movement. But I think a lot of people forget that it includes observing these disparities between urban and rural areas and those who live there. And so, you know, I would encourage everybody to, moving forward, when you're thinking of the intersectional climate movement, don't just think about the Front Range. Think about all of these small communities and, you know, little towns of like 3 ranchers, which you'd be surprised, they do exist around here. You know, because that is us being unified is what's going to make the change, even though it's not necessarily something that those people can see just yet. So hopefully that covered everything.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lili. I think you had a lot of really valuable points there, and as somebody that grew up on the Western Slope as well, I think trying to find shared values as the points for commonality and building unity is so important, and recognizing that there is this emotional weight with our transition, protecting workers, with making sure that the Western Slope and a portion of our state that is employed by this industry are taken care of as well, and that frontline communities are uplifted in that. So Micah, given what you've heard here today, and as a climate organizer for over 25 years, I'm curious what you think the next steps are for the Colorado climate movement, and what kind of action we should be demanding from our elected leaders and mobilizing for in communities.
Thanks, Julia. And I just want to tell everybody, all of our speakers who've joined us today, we appreciate you all so much, and all of you who've joined us to listen in and who pitch in every single day in all of your ways. We appreciate all of you so much. So just to share a few of my thoughts, I think, you know, while there's a temptation during this time of crisis to think that we need to slow down, delay our work to address the climate crisis, I agree with Naomi Klein and others who've pointed out that it's within these moments of crisis that societies reinvent themselves, for better or for worse. The rich and powerful who are invested in the status quo want to use these moments to gain more power and wealth. So it's more important than ever that we stand united for a future that prioritizes people and planet over profits for the few, and that we chart a new path that demands society has justice and health and safety. And there seems to be a growing awareness around our interconnectedness with each other, with nature, with our food systems, our energy systems, and with the intersectional issues we face as individuals and as a society, and the overlapping root causes of these injustices. And it's our responsibility to collectively say no to the systems that don't serve the greater good, and to create and share and bring into fruition a vision for a future that we know is needed at this point in history. And this means fighting for Green New Deal style policies at the local, state, and federal levels that prioritize a rapid, just transition off fossil fuels to renewable energy within the next decade, that uplifts frontline communities and workers. So one, we have to keep building the climate justice movement, working together in intersectional coalitions, supporting each other, and continually educating more people and training and empowering new leaders. Two, achieving our goal of keeping global temperature rise below 1.5 degrees Celsius means we have to stop the development and burning of all new fossil fuels. The transition off coal is already well underway, and thanks to leaders here across the state, coal burning power plant closure dates are speeding up. Permitting additional fracking must stop. Here in Colorado and beyond, scientists at Harvard, Cornell, NASA have all shown that the frightening spike in methane over the last 10 years is due to the increased fracking in North America. So we have to do our part to address the climate crisis, and that must include a plan to quickly phase out fracking. And we all know it's also poisoning our communities with benzene and other VOCs. It's leading to F-grade air quality all along the Front Range, and our communities will likely be left cleaning up the industry's mess as investors are finally noticing that the industry has never even had 1 year of positive cash flow, and many of the companies are going bankrupt. So we have to stay active, pushing for the strongest possible policies and regulations at the state and local levels. 350 Colorado and many allies are active as parties in the rulemakings happening at the COGCC and the Air Quality Control Commission to achieve the climate goals of House Bill 1261 and to implement SB 181, which requires the prioritization of public health, safety, and the environment over fracking. So wherever we can, we have to push for local bans, moratoria, increased setbacks, and demand the most protective standards, monitoring, and consequences for those in violation. We have to keep calling for a halt to fossil fuel activities during the pandemic, which is making people, especially communities of color, who are most frequently at the fence line of polluting facilities, most vulnerable. We have to call for a stop to this environmental racism, including a shut-in of fracking by Bella Romero Academy in Greeley and a shutdown of the Suncor tar sands oil refinery in Commerce City, both of which are poisoning mostly Latinx and African American communities. And thirdly, our movement must keep promoting a vision for the future that we do want, a rapid, just transition to 100% renewable energy with prioritization of frontline communities and training programs for workers that are most impacted by the transition. Focus on local food and regenerative agriculture, as Hunter was talking about, to build healthy soils and local resilience and to sequester carbon in the soils. And we have to keep pushing for divestment of public funds from fossil fuels and the creation of public banks to keep taxpayer dollars local, supporting the renewable energy transition and local businesses and agriculture, healthcare, housing, and other community needs and values. Together, well, unfortunately, we know that the current situation won't be the last crisis we face, so we have to stand together. We have to build back better, as Hunter says, and create a new path that future generations on this planet deserve. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Micah. Wow. I feel like I've learned so much from every single one of you so far, and we're getting pretty close to the hour here. So I just wanted to do a quick time check for any of our panelists. You have a hard stop at 5, just so I can, okay, great. So I just have one other thing that I really want to kind of end with, and I think that this is the beginning of a conversation. There are so many questions that I have, so many conversations that I want to have, and I'm sure everyone on this call is feeling the same way. And you know, we are committed to having that conversation and continuing that momentum at 350 Colorado. And we want to invite everyone here to participate in that, in the conversations around a just recovery. If you have ideas, send them to us in an email, drop them in the chat. We want to hear you, our grassroots movement. That is where our power comes from. That is where the solutions are going to come from, is from the people at the ground, not at the top. And so all of you are so important to that. And I would be remiss without saying that, of course, doing these things takes money. And so at 350 Colorado, this event today is meant to launch our Fundraise Up for Our Future campaign, and we need to raise $25,000 to make it through the summer to cover our organizing costs for our staff. For Zoom costs money, right? Like all of these things that we're doing to adjust to this moment and make sure that we succeed, they cost money. And so I would love to ask everyone, I know times are tough, please only give if you can, but if you even have $5 to invest in this future that we're building together in this moment, we would really appreciate it. And we are donating 25% of those funds to Indigenous communities most in need, including to Maria's fundraiser. So Amy's gonna drop the link into the chat. But I wanted to close our call.
Julia, could I just say a tiny word about that?
Yeah.
I got to do this last night with your colleagues at 350 Massachusetts, who are doing remarkable work, and with 350 in California in a couple of days, and so on and so forth. I just want people to understand how useful it is to have people on the ground doing the work in particular places who are also linked into this kind of global network, so that we can both work on a local and on a national level, just like Micah was saying, on an international level. And it's absolutely crucial infrastructure. Most of the time we're doing, you're there trying to make sure that your, elected officials aren't drinking fracking fluid and, whatever else they're up to. But there are times when we all have to come together. And I remember how much work everybody in Colorado put into making last September and those climate strikes a huge day, and some of it was great youth leadership, Haven Coleman there, and, pushing and all of that. And some of it was the kind of logistical backbone that y'all were providing to make sure that there were stages and bathrooms and all the other things that you have to do if you're going to do this kind of work. So this is when we talk about building the world that we need, this is part of it. We need a kind of structure, people in place who know how to do this work. And I just can't thank you all enough. I know that there are no more talented set of organizers in the country, really in the world, than you guys in Colorado. I've been working with Micah since I can't even remember. She must have been 4 or 5 when we started working together.
Thank you.
But it's really amazing to see what you guys have done and how much you managed to shake things up. And the money is definitely a part of it, because that's what lets people do the work that they do. So good on you for doing it. And thank you for just all that you're about.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Bill. And I just wanted to really quickly make sure to thank personally all of our matching donor committee, which has it's raised up to $18,000 in matching funds, thanks to these incredibly generous, caring people. And so I just wanted to quickly mention them: Sisters of St. Francis, Chris Crosby, Diana and Lee Bray, Workplace Giving Fund, Miranda Glassbergen, Leslie Shine, Barney White, Joe Bredden, and Scott's Roofing. Thank you all so incredibly much.
Yeah,
Thanks
thank
again
you.
to all of our speakers and everyone.
And I have one more question to close us out. So you're not allowed to leave quite yet, unless you have somewhere important to be, obviously. And thank you. I see everybody who's saying that they donated so far. That's so awesome. Thank you so much. So I just kind of wanted to close out this call, and this is for our panelists, but it's also for people in the chat. I think that in general, and this was also recently called out by Jamie Henn, that as environmentalists, we need to do a better job describing the future that we want to build and exciting our base, and especially not our base, everyday people who don't understand what this future could be like, because they haven't envisioned it yet. And it's our job to help create that vision and to tell people about that vision, and really bring it down to the individual level. And so I want all of us to just close our eyes for a second and imagine that we have succeeded, because we will, in this just recovery, and that we have a clean energy future, that we've dismantled these oppressive systems that are hurting people across the world, and the income inequalities that exist within our societies, and that we're in this future. What excites you the most? Like, just in just a few words, like, what do you see in your personal life that excites you about this future? And I'll ask each of the panelists to share really quickly, and then if folks who are in the chat want to drop in the chat some of the things that excite you about the potential future that we can build together, I would love to hear. So does anybody want to go first out of our panelists, or should I call on someone? Oh, yeah, woo!
What I'm really excited about is I see the young people out in the street fighting for what they believe in. They have something to hold on to. And I think they're on the right side of the issue.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Emmett. Who's next? How about you, Lili?
I think I am most excited to continue to see recognition of one, intersectionality, and two, the recognizing the work of Black and Brown organizers on so many different issues. I think all of that's coming to light. And so I think that as we continue to move forward, our level of intersectionality, if you could quantify it, would go up by a bazillion. So I am very, very excited about that.
Great. Bill, what about you?
Well, I mean, I'm less good about thinking about how the world's going to be when we win, because I'm always just too engaged in fighting at any particular moment. But if we posit a world where we've won the fight, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm never coming on a webinar again. I'm just going for a lot of hikes up in the mountains, and coming back for a nice cold beer on the porch when I'm done. Since I'm a Vermonter, it'll be Vermont beer probably, but I'm not adverse to an occasional shipment from the Rocky Mountains too, because you guys do pretty good at this stuff too.
Thank you. What about you, Hunter? Oh, wow.
I'm excited by so many things these days. The 8 million people that came into the streets last September, with young people like Greta, like Liliana, all over the world. And now this week, there have been so many people of color murdered. It is a daily occurrence. And this time, hundreds of thousands, it will be millions, are coming into the streets, and not just in this country, but around the world. One of the things that this pandemic has taught us is that we are all in this together. It's only a little planet. And that when we work together, we can accomplish amazing outcomes. So the outpouring, even in the face of the risk, the people who are coming into the streets and demanding change. And now we are starting to see real change. Jurisdictions are starting to put limits on policing. We need so much more, so much more. Scotland is going to be 100% renewably powered before the climate summit, which has been postponed, but they were going to be before the summit in November. Spain is on its way to being 100% renewably powered. Nation after nation after nation is committing to 100% renewables. And oil fell to minus $47 a barrel. Liliana, I think you can start saying to the people in Grand Junction, I know Grand Junction well, I lived on the Western Slope for many, many years, that fossil is uneconomic. Give them a copy of Carbon Tracker's report, 2020 Vision, which said the amount of about to be stranded fossil assets is $25 trillion worth. Do they want to be part of a stranded industry? And if not, now is the time to shift with organizations like Solar Energy International in Paonia. Learn how to become a solar installer. Begin to transform their own life away from a technology that's dying to the technology of the future. And if any of you want a positive vision, when I wrote the book, A Finer Future, the first chapter was really, no kidding, we're in trouble. And the early readers said, we can't read it. So I rewrote the first chapter to be, it's 2050 and we won. And what does it feel like? And just walked through examples from around the world. Every one of them footnoted, this is happening already somewhere in the world. As William Gibson, the science fiction writer, said, The future's already here. It's just not widely distributed yet.
Thank you, Hunter. Wow. Yeah. Micah, what about you?
Well, I love the question because I very much believe you have to be able to see it to be able to achieve it. We have to all be conjuring up this image of what our positive vision of the future looks like and feel it, smell it, taste it, and help to create it. And because I think, it's that sort of forward-looking and positive vision that is, it's magnetic and people get excited by that. It's very dreary and sad to look at the things that aren't working. And we, like I said earlier, we have to say no to the things that we don't want, but we also have to work very hard toward the future that we do want. So, I think there are lots of things that excite me about it, so I won't go on too long, but I'll just say the interconnectedness and that kind of striving together, caring for one another, and striving, for the greater good.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. Yeah, I know for me, I want to be able to go for a hike on the Front Range and look back and not see a big brown cloud. That's what excites me. What about you, Maria? And you're on mute.
So for us, it's the wonderment of the youth that are coming behind us, the next 49 generations, and how they're stepping up and asking questions and looking for leadership and having their own inner wisdom. I think what Hunter talked about and what Micah talked about, there's so many wonderful things happening. If we could take some of these colleges and who teach people who don't have an education, like how to make the solar silicon discs, and take those manufacturing companies out to reservations or to poor areas and actually teach them skills and give them a way to believe that there's a future that can really include them and that can also use the sun where they live to help them have the things that they right now don't have anything of. No electricity, no lights. And how can we inspire the youth who are in college, who have been apolitical, who have been trying to standing back? How do we get all those people to start understanding that metakuase, we are all related, that everything, every thought that we have, every heartbeat that we have affects absolutely everything all around us. So that if we can all learn how to breathe as one heartbeat, one spirit, that is a way that we can change, like the stone in the water, the ripples that go out throughout the world. It just takes a moment of prayer, a moment of thought, a moment of intention. And then the spirits come in and say, oh, okay, we'll meet you there. And then, and I take action, and then they meet you there. It's those of us who sit back and just say, let somebody else do it. We're all the somebody else. Everybody's the somebody else. We can't leave and just be sitting back anymore. It's time to really take action and be there with the youth and help them create the world that they want to live in so that they can have clean water to swim in, clean water to drink, sacred mini wichoni, they can have clean food, and they can have shelter and water. And for those people who don't have shelter and water, that we make sure that they have it, that everyone is treated equally and justly, not just in living situations, but in education and everything that everyone has been saying. If we can create that kind of a world, and I believe we can, because there are more people who are not in the 1%ers or 2%ers and are really willing to share and help those in need. Just like the man in New York who let 70 people in his house to save them from the bullets and the tear gas, knowing that he was putting himself in danger with the pandemic. He just kept saying, come in, come in, come in, get away from them. And they were all strangers, and he kept them there in his house overnight, all night, so they could be safe, even though the police kept trying to knock on the doors, even though they said 9/11 was called. He just held his ground. That's what it's just that simple and just that complicated. But I think the future is fantastic. We have a lot of huge, wonderful things coming.
Thank you, Maria. Great. Yeah, I'm here for it. I think this is the moment. We're in this like weird pandemic, everything this year, everything, but I feel like I have grown so much through all of this process, and I've seen all of us grow as well, and this movement grow, and we're going to continue to grow. And this is the moment for our revolution. If there was ever a moment, it is right now. And I want to thank every single one of our panelists for joining on this call, all of the people who are watching both on Facebook and on Zoom or watching the recording later, that this can feel so overwhelming when you think about it and it's just one person. Whether, you know, it's the climate crisis, whether it's systemic racism, whether it's income inequality. And we build power by being in these movements, by knowing that you are backed by 20,000 other people who have committed to take action on climate in Colorado, or the 100 other people that are on this call. It's this community that we build power in, and that is the reason that we will ultimately succeed. And so I want to thank everybody. We're going to close out with a prayer from Maria here in a second. And I just wanted to say that we have raised $2,000 in the last hour. We're hoping to raise $3,000 on this call. So please, again, if you're able, invest in this work, invest in the frontline organizers that are doing this work, the systems that we need to make these things a reality, from sending emails to hosting Zoom calls to sending thousands of emails to the governor's office to make him pay attention to these sort of things. So please help us support that infrastructure to make this movement as powerful as we possibly can. So I just wanted all of our panelists here to just wave and say thank you again so much for being here, and we'll continue this discussion outside of this. Again, this was just the beginning, and I'm so excited to continue on this journey with all of you. So Maria, would you please close us out?
Thanks. Don Kashila, grandfather, Unshi, grandmother, Unshi Maka, grandmother earth, Mini Wichoni, sacred water, all the winged ones, all the creepy crawlers, all the ones that swim in the water, all the four-leggeds, all the standstill nation that you call the trees, all the living beings, all the elements of air, the stone nation, Tonka Ayate, Petawakan, sacred fire. We ask that you watch over all the people who are listening at this time and will be listening in the future to this. We ask that you let that spirit, that fire inside them that creation has lit, that flame, let it grow. Let the air get to it and let their hearts open. Let them hear that they're being called to be in service. Let them understand that one of their purposes in this lifetime, that they chose to come during this pandemic, that they chose to come during this time of Standing Rock, that they came during this time of the death and the protests that are happening because of George. Help them to understand that it's really about us all being connected to each other and that we are one family of all living beings. Help us when we get tired or when we're confused. Help walk on the side of us, walk on our right side, walk on our left side, walk behind us when we're strong enough to walk in front and lead the way. And when we sometimes can't see the path in front of us, we ask that you walk in front of us, creation, so that we can follow you till we're less confused, but that we always know that we're never alone, that nothing is impossible, and that you did not send us here to survive, you sent us here to thrive. And when we're sometimes too tired to even walk or to think, we ask that you pick us up and carry us and fill our fountains back up with the water so that people can come back to drink from the fountain, so that we can continually give to the people. So there is a circle of life that continually replenishes and replenishes and replenishes. That's what Grandmother Earth does, constantly replenishing that circle of life, giving us that joy, that rebirth, and reminding us how she takes care of herself and how we must learn how to take care of ourselves, and then learn how to take care of each other, and then learn how to take care of the world. But it doesn't need to be slowly. It can be as quickly as a prayer. And we ask that you go to each one of us at this moment and let us come together in one breath, one heartbeat, like the sound of the drum, so that we all may work in unison, no matter where we are on the planet, with the same intention, so that Grandmother Earth and all its inhabitants and all its living beings can join together in harmony, in balance, in peace, in prayer, and love. Aho, mitaki ase tonkashla, grandfather, grandmothers. Aho. And to all of your relatives as well, all your ancestors, to each and every one of you. May they all join together in a council gathering of ancestors, all together. We need all their help to make these changes. They are all equally as important. We are all the same. We're one family of humankind. We all bleed the same. Let's remember that. Aho.
Thank you so much, Maria. And again, thank you so much to everybody that joined on here. This will be posted on YouTube later tonight, and I'll send it out in an email probably on Monday. And it's also on our Facebook. So if you want to rewatch it, share it, I encourage you to do so. I encourage you to start having conversations in your communities about what this means and how we take this forward, and joining, volunteering with us, doing anything that you can to help move this movement forward. It's, you know, it's every small action, every big action makes a huge difference. And so I want to just thank you and say goodnight. Have a good weekend, everybody.